the quiet edge of Prescott National Forest, where wilderness blends into civilization, Emily Parker's life took an unexpected turn when she brought home Max, a rescued bobcat deemed unreleasable to the wild. As a wildlife rehabilitation specialist, Emily understood the delicate balance between respecting nature and providing care. Her young daughter Lily shared their home not just with Emily, but with Max, the bobcat whose wild instincts always lingered beneath his otherwise gentle demeanor. But one fateful afternoon, when Emily stepped away for just 60 seconds, everything changed. There was a strange sound from the backyard. A desperate call. Rushing back, Emily's heart pounded as she realized the yard wasn't how she left it. What happened in that brief moment would challenge everything Emily thought she knew about wild animals, maternal instinct, and the extraordinary depths of unexpected love. This is a story of boundaries crossed, trust earned, and a sacrifice that would forever change the meaning of family. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. And make sure to tap that notification bell so you never miss a new story. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the yard of a modest ranch house, nestled at the edge of Prescott National Forest in northern Arizona. Emily Parker stood at the kitchen sink, scrubbing dirt from beneath her fingernails after a long afternoon tending to her vegetable garden. Through the window, she could see her 1-year-old daughter, Lily, sitting contentedly on a blanket in their fenced backyard, babbling to herself as she examined a colorful plastic toy. Nearby, stretched lazily in a patch of dappled sunlight, was Max, the most unusual member of their little family. The young male bobcat's tawny spotted coat gleamed in the sun. His tufted ears twitched occasionally at distant forest sounds only he could hear. His presence in their home was the result of circumstances Emily never could have predicted. Just 6 months earlier, Emily hadn't planned to adopt a wild animal. She'd spent most of her adult life as a wildlife rehabilitation specialist, dedicating herself to healing injured animals and returning them to the wild. That's how she first met Max, a severely malnourished and injured bobcat kitten brought to the Southwest Wildlife Conservation Center, where Emily volunteered 3 days a week. He'd been found trapped in an illegal snare, his right front paw mangled and infected. At first, the veterinarians didn't think he'd survive, but Max proved to be a fighter. After multiple surgeries, he pulled through, though the damage to his paw meant he'd never be able to hunt effectively in the wild. Because of that, Max was deemed unreleasable, a permanent captive. During his recovery, Emily developed a special bond with him. Unlike most wild animals who retain a healthy fear of humans, Max showed an unusual temperament. Cautious, but not fearful. Observant, but never aggressive. When the center faced budget cuts and had to find permanent homes for some of their educational animals, Emily made the difficult decision to apply for a special wildlife rehabilitation permit that would allow her to bring Max home. It wasn't a simple process. The permitting was rigorous, involving home inspections, extensive documentation of her experience with wild felines, and even construction of a secure outdoor enclosure. But 3 months ago, Max finally came home. The transition had its challenges, but Max adapted remarkably well. What surprised Emily most was his gentle curiosity around Lily. At first, the bobcat gave the toddler a wide berth, but over time he grew more comfortable, sometimes watching her play from a few feet away. Emily, of course, never left them alone. No matter how well-behaved Max seemed, he was still a wild animal, a predator, guided by instincts that couldn't be erased. Now, standing at the sink, Emily reached for a dish towel to dry her hands. She glanced once more at the peaceful scene outside. Lily on the blanket, Max dozing in the sun. It was their typical afternoon routine. She just needed to grab the laundry from the dryer in the adjacent utility room, a task that would take less than a minute. Everything will be fine, she told herself. Just 60 seconds, Emily murmured, turning from the window. She walked briskly to the utility room, pulled the warm, clean clothes from the dryer, and began folding them into the laundry basket. Her mind drifted to thoughts of dinner and her mom's upcoming weekend visit. It was amazing, she thought, how normal life could feel, even with a bobcat in the house. Then she heard it, a strange noise from the backyard. Low, guttural. Max's warning call. Emily's heart skipped. She dropped the shirt in her hands and ran back to the kitchen. Through the window, she could no longer see Lily on her blanket. Panic surged. She burst through the back door, eyes scanning the yard, heart thundering in her chest. And then she saw it. Max had Lily by the back of her overalls, dragging her rapidly across the yard toward the house. His movements were urgent, but careful. His powerful jaws holding the fabric tight, never touching her skin. Lily wasn't crying. She looked more surprised than scared, her little hands grabbing at the grass as she slid across it. "Max!" Emily gasped, rushing toward them. The bobcat gently released Lily and swayed on his feet. He turned, his eyes fixed on something near the blanket where Lily had been sitting. That's when Emily saw it. A rattlesnake, coiled and ready to strike again. Its distinctive rattle finally registered in Emily's ears. Max collapsed onto his side, his breathing shallow. A small trickle of blood matted the fur on his front leg. And in that moment, Emily understood with terrifying clarity. The snake had approached while Lily was playing. Max had seen the danger and acted. He pulled Lily away and got bitten in the process. The realization hit Emily like a wave of ice, followed by a fiery rush of adrenaline. She scooped Lily into her arms, now crying, and quickly checked her over for signs of injury. Emily thanked Dr. Harris and hung up, finally allowing herself a moment to sit down on the couch. The soft hum of the baby monitor filled the silence. Lily had drifted off to sleep minutes ago, her small body curled peacefully under a blanket, oblivious to the dramatic events of the day. Emily stared at the faint glow of the phone screen in her lap, a swirl of emotions knotting in her chest. Relief, fear, gratitude. Her eyes wandered to the empty corner near the fireplace where Max often lounged during the evenings. She could almost hear his low growl of contentment, the flick of his tufted ears as he watched over the house like some silent guardian. Despite everything she knew about wild animals, despite all the books, lectures, and caution she'd lived by, the image of Max dragging Lily away from danger had changed something fundamental in her. It wasn't just instinct or familiarity. It was loyalty, love, maybe. Not the kind humans write poems about, but the raw, protective bond that sometimes forms against all odds. Emily drifted off on the couch, her sleep restless and shallow. She awoke before dawn, heart pounding, convinced she'd missed a call. But her phone was silent. She tiptoed into Lily's room to check on her. The little girl was still fast asleep, her tiny hand gripping a plush raccoon. Emily pressed a kiss to her forehead, then padded into the kitchen to brew some coffee and wait. By 7:30 a.m., her phone finally rang. "Emily, it's Dr. Harris." Max made it through the night without complications. He's still weak, but alert. He even growled at me when I checked his IV, which I'm taking as a good sign. Emily laughed, the sound raw with relief. "That's definitely Max. You can come pick him up later this morning if you're ready. He'll need continued care, limited movement, antibiotics, and close monitoring for the next few days. But I believe he'll make a full recovery. I'll be there in an hour," she promised. Back at the clinic, Max looked haggard but alive. His leg was bandaged and an IV line still ran into his front paw. But his golden eyes tracked Emily with their familiar intensity, and when she leaned closer, he gave a soft, raspy grunt, somewhere between a purr and a growl. Emily knelt beside his cage, Lily in her arms. "Hey there, brave boy," she whispered. "You scared the life out of me." Max blinked slowly. Emily liked to think it was his way of saying I'm okay. Dr. Harris came in with discharge instructions and a small cooler of medication. "He's still at risk for infection, so keep the wound clean. He'll probably be lethargic for a while, and you'll need to prevent him from climbing or jumping. Emily signed the forms and loaded Max into the SUV, positioning his carrier on the back seat, beside Lily's. The toddler pointed at him and squealed in delight, clearly happy to see her furry friend again. On the drive home, Emily kept glancing into the rearview mirror, at Lily's wide smile and Max's tired but alert gaze. Over the next few days, the house transformed into a convalescent center. Emily confined Max to the living room, blocking off staircases and furniture with makeshift barriers. She administered his medications diligently, sat beside him through the night, and even convinced Lily to be gentle around him. A tall order for a toddler. Each day, Max grew stronger. By the end of the week, he was walking with a limp, but with a determined stride. He even resumed his perch by the window, watching birds flutter by and occasionally growling when the mail truck arrived. Emily couldn't stop thinking about what Dr. Harris had said, that a wild animal defending a human child was almost unheard of. She began researching cases, diving into old field reports, academic papers, and news articles. There were stories, scattered and rare, wolves defending orphan children, elephants forming lifelong bonds with humans who had rescued them, dolphins nudging drowning swimmers to shore. But a bobcat, it was unheard of. And yet, here Max was. One evening, Emily sat on the porch, watching the sky turn gold. Max lay beside her, bandaged leg tucked beneath him. Lily was asleep inside. The memory of the rattlesnake returned unbidden, and she reached over to scratch Max gently behind the ears. "You knew," she said softly. "You saw the danger and you chose to act, not just for survival, for Lily." Max didn't respond. Sis, of course, but he didn't need to. In that moment, something shifted inside Emily. She realized their story wasn't just about rehabilitation or cohabitation. It was about trust, about crossing the invisible boundaries between species and finding something real on the other side. Weeks later, Emily sat in front of her computer, a cup of tea in hand. A draft of her newest article glowed on the screen, titled, "When the Wild Comes Home: How a Bobcat Became My Daughter's Guardian." She hit submit and leaned back, watching Max stretch out in the sunbeam slanting through the window. He was healing, not just his body, but his spirit too. And so was she. Because love, as it turned out, sometimes had claws. Margaret looked at the bobcat, who now lay stretched comfortably on a patch of sun-warmed wood, eyes half closed, but ears alert. "I still think it's madness keeping a wild animal around a baby," she muttered, then paused and added, "But I suppose he's earned a bit of credit." Emily smiled softly. "He's not just any wild animal, Mom. You should have seen him that day. He didn't hesitate. I've worked with dozens of animals, rescued, rehabilitated, released, but I've never seen anything like this." Margaret sipped her tea, watching as Lily splashed in her little pool, Max calmly observing a few feet away. "Still, this doesn't mean he's safe forever. You can't predict wild instincts." Emily nodded. "I know. I'm not pretending everything's perfectly safe. I keep boundaries. But it's also clear now. Max sees Lily as part of his world. He could have run. He didn't. He made a choice. And that means something." For a moment, neither woman spoke. The warm afternoon buzzed with the hum of cicadas, the occasional chirp of birds in the distance, and Lily's giggles as she waved a floating duck toy at Max. The bobcat flicked, his ear unimpressed but tolerant. Eventually, Margaret leaned back in her chair with a reluctant sigh. "Well, it's your house, your rules, but if he ever starts acting strange, promise me you'll do what's necessary." "I promise," Emily said, her tone sincere. That night, after Margaret had gone to bed in the guest room and Lily was tucked in peacefully, Emily found herself back on the porch. Max lay near her feet now, his breathing steady and deep. The stars were out, clear and brilliant in the remote Montana sky, The air was crisp with a hint of pine and summer dust. Emily turned to the Bobcat. "You changed everything, you know," she said softly. "You reminded me that there are still mysteries left in the world, that maybe not everything needs to be explained to be meaningful." Max didn't move, but his tail twitched once, lazily. In the days that followed, Max's strength returned fully. The limp faded, replaced by his usual fluid, silent gait. But something else had changed too. He became more present. No longer did he retreat to the woods for long hours as he once had. He stayed closer to the house, often lying in the shade near Lily while she played or sitting by the porch steps in the evenings. Emily found herself documenting his behavior more often, filming short clips, writing notes. What had started as a chance rescue was becoming something larger. She reached out to a behavioral ecologist she'd known from grad school, Dr. Amina Patel, and explained the situation. "You're telling me a wild bobcat has not only bonded with your child, but saved her from a rattlesnake?" Amina's voice crackled with interest over the phone. "This needs to be studied, observed. Ethically, of course, and with as little disruption to his behavior as possible." Emily agreed. "I'm not turning this into some media circus, but people need to understand what this could mean." Soon, a quiet collaboration formed. Cameras were installed in discreet corners of the yard, designed to monitor Max's behavior without interference. Emily continued her routine with Lily, and Max, ever aware but unbothered, remained the ever-present, silent guardian. One afternoon, as Emily watched the footage with Amina on a video call, they observed a sequence that stunned them both. Lily had tripped while walking toward her sandbox, landing with a soft cry. Max, who had been lounging near the edge of the yard, immediately rose and trotted over. He didn't touch her, but he stood between her and the direction she'd been heading, a dense thicket known for fox burrows and occasional coyotes. His posture was protective, alert. "Did you see that?" Amina said. "That's not random. That's vigilance. That's calculated. It's like he knows." Emily whispered. "He understands that she's vulnerable." As the summer wore on, Max's story began to gain quiet traction in scientific circles. Amina published a brief article about preliminary observations of cross-species protective behavior in a semi-rehabilitated wild feline, without revealing specific details. More questions than answers emerged, but all agreed it was rare, possibly unprecedented. And then, something else happened. One morning, while Emily and Lily were out picking blueberries along a nearby trail, they came across a park ranger's truck parked haphazardly near one of the old hunting cabins. A trail of disturbance, broken branches, scuffed dirt led away from it. Sensing something was wrong, Emily picked up Lily and quietly followed the trail, her instincts sharp. What she found shocked her. Near the base of a rocky incline, a young man lay unconscious beside a fallen ATV, a deep gash across his forehead, and standing between the man and the trail where Emily stood, Max. The bobcat's ears were back, his body low, tail flicking. At first, Emily thought he was in defensive mode, but then she saw it. A second figure, retreating into the woods, a man. Tall, wearing dark clothing, and definitely not a ranger. Emily called 911 immediately. The injured ranger, as it turned out, had stumbled upon a group of poachers setting illegal traps in the reserve. He'd been attacked and left for dead. Max had either chased the assailants off or interrupted them. By the time authorities arrived, Max had vanished, slipping back into the forest. The poachers were eventually caught, thanks in part to the description Emily gave of the fleeing man. The ranger survived and later confirmed the story, describing a large cat, like a lynx or something, staring the guy down. Max returned to Emily's property that evening, calm as ever, though with a small scratch above his left eye. Emily tended to it as best she could, shaking her head. "You're becoming a legend, you know that?" That fall, Max officially became a subject of study under a wildlife ethics grant. Emily, with Amina's support, gave a talk at a small conference about the unique case of Max the guardian bobcat, but within her heart, it wasn't the scientific interest, the accolades, or the media curiosity that mattered most. It was the quiet moments. The sound of Lily's laugh as Max flicked his tail in the grass, the way he stood watch by the porch at dusk, and the look in his golden eyes. Wild, unknowable, and fiercely loyal. Max had come into their lives as a rescue. He stayed as a protector. And over time, he became something neither wild nor tame, but something infinitely more rare. Family. The days continued to pass, each one blurring gently into the next, marked by small milestones in Max's recovery and Lily's growing vocabulary. The toddler, now confidently walking, began to string together simple phrases. "Max, sit," she'd say proudly, pointing to the bobcat, who often obliged by settling into a sphinx-like posture nearby, his golden eyes quietly observing. Emily had taken to journaling each day, not just for her own peace of mind, but to document the extraordinary experience they were all living through. Her entries were filled with moments that might have seemed mundane to an outsider. Max flinching at the sound of a dropped spoon, Lily offering him half a banana, which he disdainfully ignored, the way he would sometimes stand between her and the doorway when strangers came to visit. One morning, while reviewing trail camera footage from the perimeter of the property, a precaution she'd implemented after the rattlesnake incident, Emily noticed something strange. At 3:12 a.m., the motion detector had been triggered. A dark figure had lingered just beyond the fence line for several minutes. It wasn't an animal. It was a man. Emily froze as she rewound and zoomed in on the footage. The face was partially obscured, but the figure's posture and movements were unmistakably human. He appeared to be watching the house. Max had been outside that night, as he often was in the cooler hours. On the video, at 3:15 a.m., a pair of glowing eyes appeared in the brush behind the man. Max. The bobcat had been watching him. And then, almost as if he sensed the man's presence before the camera had picked it up, Max had begun to advance silently. The man turned abruptly and left. Emily shivered. Who was that? And why had Max not alerted her? Why had he simply observed? She shared the footage with the local ranger station, and although they had no immediate leads, they promised to patrol the area more frequently. Emily installed additional cameras and lights around the property, and her watchfulness increased tenfold. Max's behavior also changed. He became more alert at night, often patrolling the edges of the yard. Sometimes he'd sit for long stretches near the back fence, ears rotating like radar dishes. Emily began to understand that Max wasn't just recovering, he was protecting them. Then came the second incident. It was late one evening, just after Lily had fallen asleep. Emily was on the porch, enjoying the cool air, when Max bolted from the shadows with a snarl that stopped her heart. She turned in time to see a man, a different one this time, dart from behind the shed and sprint toward the woods. Max didn't pursue, but the message was clear. He'd intercepted a threat. This time, the ranger station responded immediately. It turned out there had been a string of burglaries in the surrounding areas, cabins and remote homes being scoped out and sometimes broken into. Emily's property, isolated but well-maintained, might have appeared to be an easy target, until someone encountered Max. The story, once just local wildlife gossip, spread further. The bobcat who saved a child had now thwarted a potential home invasion. News outlets contacted Emily for interviews, but she declined them all. Her priority was Lily's safety and Max's privacy. Still, the tale took on a life of its own. One crisp morning, Emily received a letter in the mail, handwritten and postmarked from Flagstaff. It was from an elderly Navajo woman named Aileen Begay. She had seen the story circulating in local newsletters and wanted to share something she thought Emily should know. Long ago, Aileen had written, Our people believed that the Bobcat was a boundary keeper, one who walks the line between the spirit world and the human one. They were not to be feared, but respected. They were said to appear when a child's fate was in question, when balance needed to be restored. The one you call Max, he is not just a protector, he is a bridge. Emily read the letter twice, her fingers trembling. There were moments she might have dismissed something so mystical as folklore. But not now. Not after everything she had seen. Not after Max. As autumn deepened and the desert evenings grew cooler, Emily began to consider what all of this meant. Not just for her little family, but for the future. Lily was growing fast, and Max wasn't a kitten anymore. He had survived, against odds, saved a life, and warned off danger. But he was still a wild creature. Would there come a time when he would leave? Return to the wilderness for good? She didn't know. But for now, he was still with them. Still keeping watch. Still choosing to stay. One night, just as a storm rolled in from the east, Lily woke from a nightmare. Emily rushed to her side, soothing her back to sleep. As she settled back into bed, she saw Max in the doorway, his fur ruffling slightly in the breeze from the open window. He stared at her for a long moment, then turned and padded back toward the hallway. In that quiet moment, Emily felt something, a shift. It wasn't fear. It wasn't even wonder. It was gratitude. Deep, soul-anchored gratitude for the mysterious, fierce, and loyal presence who had stepped into their lives from the wild and chosen, day after day, to stay. Outside, the storm began to rumble across the mountains. Inside, a mother, a child, and a wild guardian slept beneath the same roof, each changed by the other, each bound by something ancient and unspoken, something no camera or journal or scientific theory could ever fully explain. And Max, he kept watch, always.